Somewhere in a data center right now, the temperature is being watched more closely than the servers themselves. That's the part people miss when they think about this business. You'd assume the valuable thing in that building is the hardware. It's not. Rip out every server and you've lost a few $1 million of equipment. Let the room overheat for 20 minutes, and you've potentially lost the reason those servers existed in the first place. Most people picture this as an HVAC job with better clients. Big units, some ductwork, a maintenance contract, done. That's not close to what's actually happening. The cooling system in a data center isn't there for comfort. Nobody's sweating in that room. It's there because silicon has a breaking point. And the entire business model of everyone renting space in that building depends on you never letting the room get near it. So this isn't really a story about air conditioning. It's a story about who gets trusted to hold the line between everything's fine and we just lost $40 million of compute time, and what that trust is actually worth once you follow the money all the way through. Here's the reframe you need to hold on to for the rest of this. People think this is an HVAC business. It's not. HVAC keeps a building comfortable. What you're actually selling is uptime insurance. A data center doesn't care if it's 72 degrees or 78 degrees in the room. It cares that the temperature never spikes high enough to start throttling or frying processors that can cost $40,000 a piece. You're not in the comfort business. You're in the catastrophic failure prevention business. And once that clicks, the pricing, the contracts, and the whole risk profile of this company start to make sense. Let's talk about what it actually costs to get into this. If you're building this as a services and installation company, not manufacturing the units yourself, but designing, installing, and maintaining precision cooling systems, you're looking at somewhere between $200,000 and $600,000 just to open the doors credibly. That range is wide because it depends on whether you're chasing small co-location facilities and edge data centers or trying to land hyperscale clients from day one. A chunk of that goes to licensing and certification. You need certified HVAC technicians, and depending on your state, a mechanical contractor's license, which involves bonding, insurance, and often a multi-year apprenticeship requirement just to sit for the exam. Budget $15,000 to $30,000 in licensing, bonding, and insurance setup alone before you've touched a single piece of equipment. You'll also need liability and errors and omissions coverage far higher than a residential HVAC shop, because if your system fails and a client loses $40 million of compute time, they will come after you, and a standard $1 million policy won't cover it. Expect your annual insurance bill alone to run $40,000 to $80,000 once you're handling real facilities. Then there's equipment and tooling. Precision cooling work requires specialized diagnostic tools, refrigerant handling equipment rated for the systems you're servicing, thermal imaging cameras to spot hotspots before they become failures, and usually a service vehicle stocked for emergency callouts. Because when cooling fails at a data center, nobody wants a callback in 3 days. They want someone there in 3 hours. That's another $60,000 to $150,000 depending on how many trucks and technicians you start with. If you're planning to service liquid cooling systems, which we'll get to later, add another $30,000 to $50,000 for the specialized fittings, leak detection equipment, and coolant handling gear those systems require, because you cannot service what you don't have the tools to touch. The mistake that kills people at this stage is underestimating the working capital cushion. Data center contracts, especially with enterprise clients, often run on 30, 60, sometimes 90-day payment terms, but your technicians need paying every 2 weeks, whether the invoice has cleared or not. You need 6 to 12 months of payroll and operating expenses sitting in reserve before you sign your first big client, because the ramp-up period, getting certified, getting insured, getting a facility to trust you with their uptime, routinely takes 8 to 14 months longer than people plan for. People budget for the cost of starting. They don't budget for the cost of waiting. Now here's the part of this business that separates the people who make real money from the people who just survive. And it comes down to one comparison. Picture 2 contracts on your desk. Contract 1 is a single big installation job, a brand new precision cooling system for a mid-size co-location facility worth $180,000. That's the deal you'd brag about. Contract 2 is a maintenance agreement on an existing facility. Quarterly inspections, filter changes, refrigerant checks, emergency response coverage, worth $18,000 a year. On paper, the installation looks 10 times more valuable. It's not. That installation is a one-time event. Once it's done, you have to go find the next one from scratch, with no guarantee it closes. The maintenance contract typically runs a minimum term of 3 to 5 years, and the renewal rate on data center maintenance, once you've proven reliable, sits north of 85%, because facility managers do not want to switch cooling vendors on a system currently keeping their servers alive. Run it forward 5 years. That $18,000 contract is worth roughly $90,000 in recurring, high-margin revenue with almost no additional sales cost after year 1. And because you're already on-site quarterly, you're the first call when something breaks, which means you also pick up the emergency repair work, the upgrade work, and eventually the next installation when they expand capacity. Over 5 years, the boring, recurring contract often out-earns the flashy one, and it costs you almost nothing to keep. Let's follow $100 of revenue from a typical maintenance contract and see what's left at the end. Labor is the biggest bite. A certified technician working on precision cooling systems isn't cheap, and with payroll taxes and benefits factored in, labor eats about $38. Parts and materials, filters, refrigerant, sensors, take another $14. Vehicle costs, fuel, and maintenance for emergency response coverage run about $6. Insurance takes another $9 once you spread the annual premium across revenue. Admin and overhead, scheduling, billing, compliance paperwork, takes roughly $11. Marketing and sales, lower here than most service businesses because so much revenue is recurring, still takes about $5. Licensing, continuing education, and equipment depreciation take another $7. Add it up. 38 plus 14 plus 6 plus 9 plus 11 plus 5 plus 7. That's $90 spent out of the $100 that came in. You keep $10. A 10% net margin on the maintenance side, which sounds thin until you remember this is recurring revenue you're collecting year after year without reselling it every time. Installation side margins run higher, 18 to 22%, but that revenue isn't guaranteed to repeat. The real business is stacking enough of these 10% recurring contracts that volume does the work. Now here's the hidden trap, and it's specific to this exact industry. It's not rising costs. It's not competition. It's customer concentration combined with key person risk, and it plays out the same way almost every time. A small cooling company lands one big client, and that one account becomes 40, 50, sometimes 60% of total revenue within 2 years, because servicing a large facility is so much more efficient than chasing dozens of small ones. It feels like stability. Then one of two things happens. Either that facility gets acquired by a larger operator who already has a preferred national vendor, and your contract gets terminated with 90 days notice, standard in these agreements. Or, just as common, the lead technician who built the relationship with that client's facility manager leaves your company and the client follows him, because in this industry, trust is built person to person, not company to company. There's a third version too, quieter but just as damaging. The client upgrades their own internal facilities team, hires an in-house engineer who used to work for a vendor exactly like you, and slowly brings the routine maintenance work in-house, leaving you only the emergency calls, which pay well individually but don't add up to a stable business on their own. Any of these can gut half your revenue in a single quarter. And because so much of your fixed cost, trucks, licensed staff, insurance, was scaled to support that one account, you can't shrink fast enough to survive it. This is why operators who last in this business obsess over one metric: no single client above 15 to 20% of total revenue. Not glamorous, just survival. Let's look at identical revenue run two different ways. Say your company does $1.2 million a year. Run unoptimized, labor, poorly scheduled with idle time between jobs, eats $540,000, about 45%. Insurance, with no safety documentation lowering your risk profile, runs 120,000. Parts, bought reactively with no supplier relationships, run 190,000. Overhead, bloated with manual processes, takes 130,000. Marketing, spent chasing one-off jobs instead of recurring contracts, takes 70,000. Total profit, about $170,000, just over 14%. Run the same 1.2 million optimized. Labor drops to 430,000 through route optimization and proper scheduling, not lower pay. Insurance drops to 90,000 because a clean safety record lowers premiums over time. Parts drop to 155,000 through negotiated supplier contracts. Overhead drops to 85,000 through basic automation. Marketing drops to 40,000 because referrals and renewals do the work new leads used to. That's 700,000 in total costs against the same 1.2 million, leaving 500,000 in profit, just under 42%. Same top line, almost triple the money, and the entire gap is operational discipline, not luck. If you're finding this useful so far, it helps a lot to hit subscribe. There's more of these coming. Now zoom out, because the ground under this industry is shifting fast, and this is the part most people don't know yet. Data centers are getting hotter, literally, because of AI. Traditional server racks ran at 5 to 10 kilowatts of power draw. Racks built for AI training clusters are hitting 40, sometimes 80 kilowatts in the same footprint, and standard air cooling physically cannot keep up anymore. That's driving a shift toward liquid cooling, direct-to-chip and full immersion systems, and most traditional HVAC-trained technicians have never touched this equipment. The companies getting their technicians certified on liquid cooling right now are positioning themselves for a wave of demand that's just starting to build, since industry analysts expect liquid cooling to go from a small niche to a double-digit share of new installations within a few years. At the same time, regulatory pressure around energy efficiency is increasing, with some regions requiring reported power usage effectiveness ratios, pushing facility owners to hire vendors who can prove their systems are efficient, not just functional. There's also a labor shift happening underneath all of this that barely gets talked about. The technicians who understand both traditional HVAC and liquid cooling systems are still rare, which means the companies that train their own people now, rather than trying to poach already scarce talent later, are building a moat that's genuinely hard to copy. You can't shortcut experience with a system that's only been widely deployed for a handful of years. The operators adapting now are going to be the only ones in the room when this next wave of contracts gets signed. So let's bring it back to where we started. You thought you were buying an air conditioning business. What you're actually buying is a piece of the trust infrastructure keeping the digital economy running. And the real asset was never the metal boxes on the wall. It's the relationship with the facility manager who calls you first when something feels off. The reputation that gets you renewed at 85% instead of reselling your value every year. And the certifications that keep you relevant as the technology underneath these buildings keeps changing shape. That's the part nobody puts in the brochure. If you're going to build this, don't go in chasing the biggest installation you can find. Go in trying to build boring, recurring, sticky maintenance revenue. Keep client concentration in check even when it's tempting not to, and get ahead of the liquid cooling shift before your competitors do. Do that, and this becomes one of the more durable service businesses you can own. Quietly profitable, hard to disrupt, tied to an industry that isn't slowing down. Get it wrong, and you're just another HVAC shop with better sounding invoices, waiting for the one client you can't afford to lose to walk out the door. If you made it this far, do us a favor and subscribe. It really does make a difference for channels like this one.